All right, welcome to another episode of NFL Outdated Cover 2 series. This episode, we're talking about the Tennessee Titans, and I am joined by Pacman, host of Pac Sports Zone. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Any day I can talk about football is a good day, even if it's the off season, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's always fun.
Well, in and talk about fun. The Titans have been fun the last couple years. They've had a lot of excitement.
Yes.
Now, a lot of interesting things that have happened in the draft and the offseason. So first of all, just want to get your thinking back to your first reaction to the AJ Brown trade.
I'm not gonna lie, I was really upset. I've
Mm.
been a Titans fan slash Oilers fan for about 30 years, and we haven't had too many really top tier wide receivers like that. I think AJ Brown is a top 10, top 15 type wide receiver, and he's a game breaker. He showed it in the playoff game against Cincinnati, having 130, 140 yards and a touchdown. He was pretty much uncoverable during that game, and seeing that, especially, and I felt a little hurt because our GM John Robinson the previous couple weeks has said we're not going to trade him. He's going to be on our team. Mike Vrabel said, as long as I'm the coach, he's going to be here. So with all that, Titans fans are like, we're defending it because we're hearing these rumors about the Jets and everything, and we're like, no, it's not going to happen. GM said it's good, coaches said it's good. So I felt hurt and a little betrayed when I heard that trade, and I actually kind of put a little bit of a bad taste on that first day of the draft because even though I'm a big fan of Treylon Burks, I had him as my number 2 wide receiver. I was upset after that first day because I like we got a rookie to replace somebody that I thought was a top 10 wide receiver. So we didn't really do anything, even though we had a top number 18 pick. So I was a little upset after that first day of draft.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it hit differently, from someone who, I mean, you kind of expect him to be a big part of the offense. I mean, you look at the receivers that tried to fill in when he was hurt and when Julio
Oh,
was hurt. It was just like people off the street. I mean, I probably could have filled in.
yeah, Cam Batson and Nick Westbrook cleaner is not going to cut it. You really needed another game breaker in there, and I felt that just pretty much kept them even. They didn't really add.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you talk about Treylon Burks, um, he's a talent.
Yes.
But with any wide receivers, it takes time, and I think it maybe is in NFL we got spoiled by what happened in Cincinnati,
Yeah.
and even what happened in Minnesota with Justin Jefferson. I mean, does Treylon Burks have that potential in year one?
In year one, I think it's going to come along a little slowly. I think it's going to be one of those wide receivers that makes a bigger impact during the second half of the year. I think if it's up to me, and I'm not sure if the Titans are finished and adding wide receivers yet, because I know Jim Wyatt of he works closely with the Titans, the main beat writer, and he's talked about them adding more pieces before the season starts. So, person that I think that they should look at is Will Fuller because they need speed to that wide receiver group. If you were able to add him, Treylon Burks could then be moved on a little bit slowly as a number 3 wide receiver. He doesn't have to be pushed in from the start. But if they don't add anybody, he's going to have a lot of pressure on him to start the season. I'm not sure how he's going to react to that, but I do think that by the second half of the year, he will be well adjusted to that team.
Yeah, and when you look at that, I mean, does that scare you at all? I mean, you think about a Titans team that really right now they're built to compete. In thinking about waiting on one of your top talents in the draft for the second half, that has to worry you a little bit, doesn't it?
It worries a little bit, but however, if you look at the team last year, they were able to, as you mentioned, they didn't have AJ Brown for 2, 3 games. I think maybe 3 or 4. Obviously, Julio Jones, this experiment didn't work out. He missed half the games, and they still were able to continue winning. And that's even without Derrick Henry. Now they still have Derrick Henry coming back, and with him coming back, you still can run the same offense. You drafted a running back and Haskins behind him, so even if he got hurt or he needed to slow down the carries a little bit. You still have somebody who's good behind him that can take some carries from him. You don't have to get somebody off the streets like they did last year to be running back. Now you actually have more depth on offense. So I think it'll be better that you can bring Treylon along slowly because they're not a passing offense. Now, I personally said I think they should go more towards a passing offense, more of a modern day passing. And that's why I really wanted AJ Brown there. But without that, they can still stay with their same offense. You got Robert Woods coming along slowly and everything and they could just run the ball and just pound it and do what they did last year.
Yeah, I mean, with that, I mean, Derrick Henry, is he going to be back at full strength? And are you hoping maybe that they don't lean on him as much in 2022?
I personally don't. I want them to have him scaled back a little bit. Now, when I say scaled back, I still want him to be around 300 carries, but I just don't want him to be around a 350, 400, which is what he was on pace for last year before he got hurt. I think if you were able to get him around 300 carries, you drafted Haskins last year, this year out of Michigan. He can give you a good 100, 150 carries. And you can still run the ball 450 times like you really want to. I don't think there's a problem with that. I think Henry will be back at full strength. I think he's a guy that he works out like a monster. You see his workout videos on Twitter and everything, and he just does things like he's like inhuman. So I think he'll be back at full strength. I think he'll be fine. It was a clean break in the foot, and they were able to heal it. All it needed was time. They may have rushed him back a little bit early for that playoff game, but it happens. I think to start the new year, you can already see the workout videos. You can see him being at full strength. I think he'll be good as soon as training camp is starting, as soon as we get into the regular season.
Yeah, and you brought up Haskins. That has to be one of the maybe under the radar draft picks because he was solid at Michigan.
Yes.
And style wise, is he similar to Derrick Henry or is he going to be a little bit different?
I think this is the thing. He's Derrick Henry, but he's not everything that he is in terms of like Derrick Henry runs a 4.5. He's super strong. He does all those things. I think Haskins is a strong runner, not as strong as Derrick Henry. I think he's a quick runner, not as quick as Derrick Henry. I think he has good vision. I think his vision is probably his best attribute. If you watched him at Michigan, he was always able to find the holes where he's able to carve out, even if the blocking wasn't great, he was able to carve out 3-4 yards. And he was obviously at the end zone. He knows how to get into the end zone. So I think his vision was his best attribute. I think if he's the best combination of what they had last year when Derrick Henry went down, because they had to split between 2-3 guys. And now they don't have to do that. I think Haskins will be able to carry the load if Henry went down. He won't be the same, but I think he can still do it.
Yeah, I mean, when you're signing, Adrian Peterson and still getting
Yeah.
touchdowns, something's still going right in the Tennessee offense.
Yeah, Dante Foreman. Listen, we helped him get that contract because he was great in that offense. He was somebody who was a similar style to Derrick Henry, ran a similar way, and he performed. I think one of the things that I really think about Derrick Henry coming in these next 2 years of his contract, I'm not sure, and I've heard a little bit about possible extension for him. I would hold back on an extension because, as we know, he's about to turn 30. We know running backs start to go a little bit down after that age, and I really don't want to keep giving him 350, 400 carries and then sign him to another 4-year contract, and then we're kind of screwed for the future. I think eventually we have to take the load a little bit off him, go a little bit more towards a passing offense, and then we're not spending $15, $20 million on a running back, which is kind of stopping us from signing other positions that we need.
Well, you talked about a little bit about the future and vision for the future. We'll get to Ryan Tannehill in a second, but what were your thoughts when the Titans drafted Malik Willis, and what do you see kind of his future with the team?
Well, I think Malik Willis is somebody that has attributes that you really can't teach. He has a rocket arm. He's very athletic. He's probably a top 5 athletic running back in the league. Quarterback in the league right now. And he has an arm that I've talked to some scouts that they say is already top 10 in the league. He has a very strong arm. So you can't teach those type of attributes. What he needs to work on is his footwork, his decision making, throwing a little bit finesse on his throws. And I think that's something you can teach during that first year. I don't think you should play this first year at all. I think you teach him during his first year, get him used to the NFL. And I think by year 2, he will be ready to possibly take over for Tannehill if needed.
Yeah, and so when you look at that, there's a talent. I mean, were you surprised that Malik Willis, slipped that far in the draft?
Yeah, the reason why is because when you have attributes like that, there was 2 guys that I really felt that I was very surprised. Him and Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder, I really think is a really good quarterback. I think Atlanta really got a good one, and he's very similar to Mariota, so I think it's going to be a perfect fit for them. I think Malik Willis is more in the Lamar Jackson style. I think he's going to be able to run more. He's going to be able to make those crazy throws, but I think he's a better thrower than Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar is getting better as a thrower and he's getting more accurate, but I think Malik Willis has a stronger arm, and I think he has more potential as a thrower than Lamar Jackson. So I really have high hopes for Malik. I was very surprised he fell that far. When in the NFL, you're looking for a guy like that to be your future guy, but the teams that are bad that want to take quarterbacks, they have to throw them in there immediately. Malik isn't ready right now. He's definitely not going to be ready for this year. Next year, hopefully. So I think it was a perfect situation for him and the Titans.
Well, speaking of, this year, I mean, is this Ryan Tannehill's last stand then, do you think?
I've said that I don't think Ryan Tannehill can win the Titans at Super Bowl. The reason why is because he's not consistent enough game over game. If you look over the regular season, he's great because he has 17 games. If he has a bad game or two, it's fine. In the playoffs, it's different. You have to be good every single game. You got to be good for 3 straight games to win a Super Bowl. And that's if you get a bye. If you don't get a bye in 4 straight games, I don't think Tannehill can be good for 4 straight games. And that's my problem with him.
When you talk about quarterbacks, a lot of times it seems to depend on the wide receivers. I
Yeah.
mean, full disclosure, I am a Bears fan,
Mhm. Okay.
living living in Wisconsin.
Okay. Wow.
Yes. So which Aaron Rodgers, all right, he is, a fantastic regular season quarterback,
Yeah.
and Packer fans and everyone, even Stephen A. Smith, he's a bad man. He says all these things, and I thought Aaron Rodgers was going to do it in the playoffs.
Yeah.
A lot of it was on receivers. I mean, he is talented, right? Probably one of the greatest regular season quarterbacks,
Yes.
but Devontae Adams, I mean, he kind of made helped develop Devontae
Yeah.
Adams.
Of course.
But then having Devontae Adams was huge.
Yes.
In the playoffs, he tried to force feed him too much and didn't rely on other receivers. So when you look at quarterbacks, I mean, I guess my question is, with Tannehill, then would he be better
Mhm.
if he had a top tier wide receiver at full strength for a full season?
I don't think that would help him. The reason why is because I think the connection between him and AJ Brown was very strong. That even
Mhm.
when with him missing 3, 4 games during the regular season, you saw how the first playoff game for them was, and he had a monster game. So I don't think that is what's holding Tannehill back. I think Tannehill is just one of those guys that he gets a little nervous in big situations
Mhm.
and he locks in on one wide receiver. And I think he locked in on AJ Brown during that playoff game and saw nobody else. And when they double team AJ Brown, he kind of panicked a little bit, threw obviously the last pass of the game to Nick Westbrook Ilaclina. And I don't think there's any way you should be passing to him on a big play when you're trying to drive for the game-winning field goal.
You just gave me a fun hot take to go at Packer fans with, comparing Aaron Rodgers to Ryan Tannehill. So I'm going to take that and run with it.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's holding back Aaron Rodgers, and I'm a big Aaron Rodgers fan. I've been a fan
Mhm.
since he was drafted. And one of the things I think is holding him is not the people around him. I think it's Aaron Rodgers. I think
Mhm.
in the regular season, Aaron Rodgers is the perfect quarterback. He
Mhm.
doesn't make mistakes. He throws no more than 2, 3 interceptions a year. And I think that actually hurts him in the playoffs because I think he's too conservative. I don't think he
Mm.
attacks as much as he should. He can make throws that pretty much nobody in the league can make. And I don't think he tries those throws enough. You saw in the playoff game against Tampa Bay a couple years ago. It was 3rd down, 4th down. He has a chance to try to fit something in when the game is on the line and he kind of just holds the ball. He gets down to the 8-yard line. He doesn't run. He doesn't do the things that he to take the chances that he needs to progress just that step that he needs to do.
That's yeah. I like that because when you look at quarterbacks, I mean, a lot of times they're based on what happens in the playoffs.
Yeah,
If they've done it before, if they've got a Super Bowl, they almost get a pass for a few years.
yeah,
And pun intended, I guess.
yeah,
Um, Aaron Rodgers. It's been a while.
yes,
I think in the AFC we'll find out too. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is a special player,
yeah,
right? But
yeah,
we'll find out, how, with Tyreek Hill being gone. I mean, that'll be interesting.
very.
Um, but looking at quarterbacks, within your division, how would you then rank them within the AFC South?
Well, I would say with everything even, I personally like Matt Ryan as the top quarterback.
Okay, yeah.
However, because things aren't even, because of offensive line, because of wide receivers, listen, he lost a left tackle and a right guard, and he lost his wide receiver and T.Y. Hilton over there. So they don't have the same weapons that the Titans will have at Ryan Tannehill's disposal. So if you're ranking them by team, with the team they're on, I put Tannehill first. If you're not ranking it with that, and it's just ranking the quarterback itself, then Matt Ryan I would put first. But the guy that I think actually that probably a year from now will be the best quarterback in the division will be Trevor Lawrence. I think they really, if they can get him a top wide receiver, because I don't think getting obviously they went out there and they spent the 18 million to get Christian Kirk from Arizona. I don't think he's the number one wide receiver. And
Mhm.
he kind of screwed up everything because once he got 18 million, every wide receiver wanted to get paid. And I
Mhm.
think that kind of what pushed AJ Brown off the Titans was that. So I think by them signing Christian Kirk, it kind of helped them by pushing AJ Brown off the Titans. But I would say he's going to be the best quarterback in that division in a year. And then Davis Mills, I'm still not sold on Davis Mills. I don't think he's really going to last there much more than a year or so.
What about Trevor Lawrence kind of tells you that like in a year he's going to be that way? I mean, other than we got all the hype and everything, what about him, tells you next year might be the year?
He has everything that you can want in a prototypical quarterback. He has the height, he has the size, he's athletic, he has an arm strength, he makes good decisions, and he's got a winning background. So everywhere he's been at, he's won. He's similar to how Joe Burrow was. Joe Burrow won at LSU. You knew he was a winning quarterback. He has the size and height. And the only thing that we're waiting to come along with Trevor Lawrence is to take command of the team. Joe Burrow was very confident, borderline cocky, but you want that out of your quarterback. We need Trevor Lawrence to show a little bit of that, and he may need a wide receiver to help him out and bring that out of him. So I think they helped their offensive line this offseason a little bit. So I think they're one big time player on offense away from him being one of those near top 10 quarterbacks.
Tell you what, I mean, if he survived the Urban Meyer debacle, I mean, uh,
That's got to make him stronger.
oh, absolutely. I can't imagine,
Oh, that's a
it, it,
mess.
talking, about the Titans and one of their strengths. I mean, the defense. I mean,
Yeah.
that obviously in the playoffs, huge. Sacking. With the Bengals. I mean, coming up huge against Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
What are some key players that are going to need to step up in 2022 on the defensive side of the ball?
Well, a lot of people are going to be talking about the secondary, specifically at cornerback, because they're all young guys. You got Christian Fulton there. They got obviously you got Caleb Fairley, the first round pick from a year ago. And now this year they drafted Roger McCray in the second round. So you have all those guys, also Molden, who they also drafted last year. So it's all young guys at cornerback. But I don't think that's as big as their D-line. Their D-line is, in my opinion, arguably the top D-line in all of football, because they think Bud Dupree is going to be back to what he was 2 years ago when he was a 10-sack guy. You have Harold Landry, who just got paid. He's a 10-sack type guy. You got Jeff Simmons, who's going to be a top 5 interior D lineman, and he's near to a 10-sack guy. And then you got Danico Autry, who usually ends up with 6 to 8 sacks every single year. So you got a D line that's going to get around 40 sacks, and that's just off the front four. Usually people have to blitz all the time. They don't have to blitz. If those front fours play well, then you got people like Byard, the guy they call the mayor in Tennessee. He's the guy. That's how he gets all his interceptions, because the quarterback is under pressure. He has to throw the ball quickly, and that's where Byard jumps the routes and gets his interceptions.
Yeah, you look at this defense, and it's built to then have with Derrick Henry then the offense just to be able to grind it, and this team is built to win now, right?
Yeah. Yes. They're on a 2-year run. I tell everybody this: they have 2 years to win it. If they don't win it in 2 years, everything has to change, because you have Tannehill for this year. Malik Willis can start next year. If not, I think Tannehill has to get to either a Super Bowl or at least the AFC Championship to be the quarterback again. If he doesn't get to one of those two things, I think they will switch over to Malik Willis. I think he is a very similar situation to Alex Smith with Kansas City, where he has to be pretty much win them a Super Bowl, or it's time to move on to the guy you just drafted.
Yeah, when you think of kind of maybe the media and the fans' reaction, I mean, are they ready to just have that switch over? I mean, Tannehill, he's I don't know, he's just like milk toast, right? He's just kind of like he's there, right?
Yeah. The fans are definitely ready. Listen, I connect with a lot of Titans fans on Twitter, and they're ready. I mean, obviously, Titans fans are loyal, so they're loyal to a fault. So as long as he's the quarterback, obviously they're going to support him. They say that's our quarterback. I support him, everything. But there's a group of fans, and I'm part of them, that is ready to move on from Ryan Tannehill. So I think as soon as they move over, first you'll have the people that wanted him to be replaced. They'll be happy. And the people that are going to support whoever the starter is, they'll be happy. So I think the fan base as a group is ready to move over from Ryan Tannehill.
Shout out to Stephanie. I'm not sure if you know her,
Yeah,
the fan of the year.
yeah,
She's a huge Tannehill fan. I had a chance to interview her, and I know, she was, similar to Vane. You're loyal to Tannehill. He's the guy,
yep.
and I totally get that. I mean, you want to be able to support your guy while he's the guy.
Yeah, and you're never going to root against your team. So no matter what, I mean, it's one of those situations where they almost are going to do better than you expect no matter what. Because if they get to an AFC championship, hey, that's better than I expected with Tannehill. If they don't get it to the AFC championship, all right, now we can move on to what we think could be possibly better in Malik Willis. So it's almost like you can't be disappointed with this year.
Yeah, with that, then what are your expectations, for this year?
I think this year is very tough because it's the AFC. I think they're lucky that they're in the division that they can win and get into the playoffs that way, because you got the entire AFC West, which every team out there has pretty a top 15, if not top 10 quarterback. You got Josh Allen and the Bills, who I think the Bills are actually the best team in the AFC right now. So you have so many different people coming from so many different areas. You're not even a lot of people aren't even talking about Cincinnati repeating the North, and their biggest weakness was offensive line. They went out there and got 3 good offensive linemen. So I don't know how you could leave them out of it for it. You got Baltimore, who's trying to come back from what they were, and Lamar and everything. So it's very tough to say, all right, I'm going to expect this team to make it to AFC Championship or make it to the Super Bowl. But I do think they can win the division. And if they win the division, they'll be in those final 7 teams. They're 1 win away from 2 wins away from being in the AFC Championship game, 3 wins from the Super Bowl.
Yeah, as long as you have a chance. I mean, we saw that with Cincinnati. I mean, no one other than maybe Dan Orlovsky,
Yeah.
predicted at the beginning of the year. And I was just talking about this with my son. It could be a crazy, Super Bowl where you just have some different and I like that. In the NFC, it's wide open. In the AFC,
Yeah.
it's wide open because there are a lot of great teams.
Yeah. And the thing about it is people do not realize every Super Bowl team needs some type of luck. You're not going to get there just off of being good. Like, I'm the best team. That's the reason why the number 1 seed doesn't make it there every year. You have to get some type of luck to make it to the Super Bowl. And that's the best thing about football. It's not baseball where you win 4 games. It's not basketball where you win 4 games to move on. It's not hockey where you need 4 games to move on. It's like March Madness. Anybody can win a couple games in a row, and all of a sudden you're in the Super Bowl. Nobody expected Cincinnati. The Rams, yes, obviously people liked the Rams last year, but you had Green Bay in there. Everybody liked the Bucks with Tom Brady. It's just one of those things where anything can happen. And maybe the team that you need, I'll give a perfect example. Cincinnati knocked out Tennessee in the second round last year. And if they didn't, then Tennessee was going against a Kansas City team that they beat up during the regular season. Then to be going against a Rams team that they beat up in Los Angeles during the regular season. So just losing to Cincinnati could arguably cost Tennessee winning the Super Bowl. So it just takes a little bit of luck. You got to get luck to make a Super Bowl and to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, in the AFC, it's just, you look at, I mean, you talked about
demolition course.
It really is, and you get in the playoffs. There's an option. When you look at the AFC teams, I mean, you're obviously you're worried most about Buffalo, right?
Yes.
And
but then the issue with that, though, I think Buffalo is the best team in the AFC. But they do not match up well with Tennessee. Tennessee always beats Buffalo. And we're going to see if Buffalo can get by that, because week 2, Tennessee goes to Buffalo. And if they can't win that game at home in Buffalo after they lost the game last year on the Josh Allen 4th and 1, if they can't win that game, then Tennessee will be completely in their head. They won't be able to beat Tennessee. But I do think Buffalo is the best team, but it depends on the matchup. A team – Buffalo versus Kansas City, we saw such a great matchup last year in the playoffs, went to overtime and ended up changing the overtime roles. I think Kansas City drops a little bit, and that's the team that everybody, obviously, because of Mahomes, is going to be high on. I think they're going to drop a little bit.
I've interviewed Broncos, Oakland, Las Vegas Raiders podcasters, and I'm actually thinking I've called that the Chiefs are going to be the last in that division. I just, it's going to be interesting to see. Mahomes is amazingly talented, but it's, keeping the play alive is one thing, but then having someone who's open is another. And Tyreek Hill is just a master at that.
And the thing about them is they had an aura about them where it's like you was almost afraid to play them because you knew they can score so many points. I said in the preseason last year that there's a couple teams, and I said Buffalo, I said Tennessee, I said Cleveland, and I said Baltimore. I said there was 4 teams in the AFC that aren't afraid of them. They don't mess with that aura. They're ready to punch them in the mouth. We saw first game of the season last year. Cleveland almost won that game against Kansas City to start the year. Kansas City started off the year back and they lost to Buffalo. They lost to Tennessee. They lost to those teams that aren't afraid of that aura anymore. And I think now without Tyreek Hill, it's going to be even more teams that I think are say, all right, just hit Mahomes and that's it. That's all it's going to be because they don't want to run the ball. I think if they run the ball, they would have so much easier time in offense. But they refuse to run the ball. I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but they don't want to. They went and got RJ Ronald Jones from Tampa Bay, so they have the running backs, but they don't want to run the ball. So I think that's going to hurt them this year.
You had brought up the Titans being a tough matchup for the Bills. Why is that?
I think sometimes it's just a scheme of things. The way that the Bills play, they're a very good defensive team. But we saw when they played against New England, that game where New England only passed it twice. They have a hard time shutting down a run for an entire game. They give up that big run eventually. And I think that hurts them in a close game against a team like Tennessee or a team like Baltimore that runs the ball a lot. I think against the Bills, if you pass the ball, they can cover everybody. They have really good secondary, Micah Hyde and everybody back there. They're really good. But if you're going to run the ball down their throats, they're good at first, but eventually they wear down. And I think teams like Tennessee can break the Bills by pounding the ball constantly. And I think New England proved that last year also.
Do you think that Von Miller addition, has to at least help that? I mean, it tries to answer that, right?
I think it will in certain matchups. I don't think it'll help against a matchup against, for example, Titans because Von Miller is known for his pass rushing. So I don't think he's going to help. I think that'll actually hurt him a little bit because he's going to be run blocking and people are going to be pushing at him instead of him pushing towards the quarterback. So I don't think it helps him against them. I think it helps him against a team like Kansas City. I think he was brought in to beat Kansas City this year. I think the Bills are looking at that type of matchup. They saw they couldn't get to Mahomes. They lost the game with 13 seconds to go. And I think they wanted another pass rusher to make sure they can get to him. And Tennessee did the same thing. When they lost to Kansas City, that's why they went out and got Bud 3. They were looking at Kansas City and said, we need another pass rusher so Mahomes is a run around back there and finding time. And so teams are still preparing for Kansas City, but they need to find some ways when certain matchups, when they play against a Baltimore, when they play against a Cleveland who runs the ball a lot, or when you play against the Titans, you have to be able to prepare against that type of a style. And I think that's the reason why those teams are able to still get wins against those top teams because their defenses are prepared for that type of style.
When you look at the AFC, I mean, we talked about some teams you're worried about. Is there a team that you look at that might be a bust in 2022?
I think you kind of mentioned them, possibly Kansas City. Without Tyreek Hill, is a very big chance that they could be the bust team this year. They're known off of speed, but they had skilled speed. That was the big thing. Tyreek Hill is one of the most skilled wide receivers in the league. Even when you give him a 5-yard out, he can take it to the house. It's not the same situation this little. McCall Hardman is not Tyreek Hill. He's as fast as him, but he can't do the same things that he can. Juju Smith, we don't know how he's going to fit into that offense yet. They obviously signed Martavius Valdez-Scantling from Green Bay. He's had trouble with drops in the past couple of years. So I think that Kansas City is one of those teams like we both talked about can scale back in the AFC. And another team that it almost is blasphemy to mention it, but New England. I think New England kind of overdid what they should have last year. I really don't think that New England was that good. Obviously they went and got Devontae Parker as a wide receiver, but they weren't good passing the ball. Mac Jones pretty much relied on Damian Harris and Stevenson to run the ball and play action. And I don't know if that's going to work this year. I know it's blasphemy to say New England is going to underachieve, but we'll see. I just not that high in New England this year.
Yeah, I mean, Mac Jones, I think that's the right system, but we really don't know how good he really is yet.
Yeah, he hasn't been forced to do anything. That's the thing. It's you hand the ball off, you do play action. That's pretty much what he's been asked to do, and he does that well. And that's what Big Ben did for his first couple of years when he was successful. So who knows? He may end up developing, but right now I don't think he's ready to take over a team yet.
it helps, when you have a coach that's been there, done that, and then if he's on your side, that's helpful. And when you look at the Titans coaching,
Yes.
um, Mike Vrabel, he's really kind of solidified himself as a solid coach. I mean, what makes him so good and what has he done with his coaching staff this year?
Well, the biggest thing about Mike Vrabel, and I consider him a top three, if not the best coach in the NFL right now, just because it's his motivation. He motivates his players. His players will run through a wall for him. And the way he talks to even the media and the players, you almost feel like he'll do the same thing for the players. So, they obviously, everybody talked about the press conference where he said he would cut off his, what, to win a Super Bowl. So
Right.
it's almost like you just want to do everything for him. I think the biggest issue with him is he's too loyal to his coaches.
Mhm.
Uh, I mean, he's had some offensive coaches, defensive coaches that he's stuck with that we've kind of like not really been agreed with. And last year, the offensive coordinator wasn't great, so we kind of wanted him gone. But he kind of negotiates. So last year, he brought in Swartz to help out on defense because we were not happy with the defense coordinator, and he helped him out. He was kind of the overseer of the defense, and he helped him out. This year, he's kind of done the same thing. He's brought in Tim Kelly from Houston, passing. He's been called the passing coordinator, but I think he's going to be pretty much running the offense in key situations. And I think that's what they're going to do to help out on the offense, because that's the one thing. If you ask almost every Titans fan the reason they lost the playoff game, they'll mention offensive coordinator and Tannehill. Those are the two things they'll mention. And some will mention Vrabel going for the 2-point conversion instead of the extra point, which may have come back, may have hurt them. But the main thing they'll mention is the offensive coordinator and Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, I mean, so looking at it's so interesting with coaches because a lot of times they do get linked to their quarterbacks,
Yeah.
and Vrabel, he's not necessarily linked to Tannehill like that.
No, he's more linked to a team. That's the
Mhm.
thing. He's not, as you said. You usually talk about how the quarterback and the coach going to get along. You don't really think about with Vrabel. It's almost like if you can't get along with Vrabel, you probably aren't the right fit anyway, and you're going to move on. That's kind of how it is in Tennessee. That people are so much behind Vrabel is that you have to get along with him, not he has to adjust to you. So it's almost that situation where I think that no matter who the quarterback is going to be, just fit under Vrabel's style, and hopefully the offensive coordinator will bring the most out of you, because they don't really talk, like you said, they don't connect Vrabel to the quarterback. They connect him to the office. They connect the quarterback to the offensive coordinator, because Vrabel was a defensive guy. He was a linebacker. When the defense is messing up, then they'll look more towards Vrabel. But when the quarterback's messing up, they're going to look towards the offensive coordinator.
So yeah, that's interesting. I'm a Bears fan, and
Mhm.
that was in the off season, it was a lot of it was got to hire an offensive coach, but in a way it was good that they hired a defensive coach, because
Yeah.
if something goes wrong with Fields,
Yeah.
then they're not replacing their coach, they're going with the offensive coordinator, and
Yeah.
and so that's not linked. So I do like that.
Yeah, I think that's a way. You see, you can look at it both ways. I mean, if you have an offensive genius mind, you want him to be connected to that because you expect him to be connected for years, whether it's a Reed from Kansas City or whether it obviously you have Mark going back in the day, you have Mike Martz with St. Louis, and now you have obviously the top offensive coordinators now and everything. So you kind of want that for the future, thinking long term. But in terms of trying to turn a team around, you just really want somebody that's going to motivate everybody. That's the
Mhm.
biggest thing. And that's a lot of thing that fans don't really pay attention to. They look at the X's and O's of a coach. They don't look and see how is he going to motivate the team. And I
Mhm.
think that's what Vrabel does better than anybody else in the league right now.
Absolutely. Well, this has been fun. I definitely appreciate you coming on. Where can everyone find you again?
You can catch Pack Sports Zone on YouTube as well as Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's also Spreaker, so you can check out any one of those. And also, I'm on a bigger show which is called Two Dudes and a Mexican. We originally started it with my friend. They're two Giants fans, and we talk about all types of sports every single week. So you can check out that also on Apple Podcasts and all the same outlets from YouTube and everything. So. And also on social media, you can catch me on Twitter, Pacman 453323.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. We'll definitely have to connect as the season gets closer. It's going to
Definitely.
be an exciting one. And thanks
Can't wait.
again.
Cannot wait. Good
Once
luck to
again,
your
this
Bears.
I don't know about this year. 2023. That's me. That's what
I
I'm
think
going
Bills
for.
will be better. I'll give you that.
I agree. I like what they've done, with the front office. They, and that's what you want to be able to trust, overall the front office, and now
Just
just
get him
kind
a
of
wide
wait.
receiver.
Yes, exactly.
Get him a wide receiver.
Well, thanks again. And once again, it's been NFL Outdated Coverage Series on the Tennessee Titans. Thanks again, Pacman.
Thank you.